The reality, most of these tools cost somewhere between tens of dollars and low hundreds of dollars per month. If you can't afford that, you don't have a business. So many entrepreneurs and solopreneurs hit that invisible glass ceiling where they just can't seem to get their business past that point. And they don't even know why. They're working harder, and yet they're just not getting the results. They're not getting the customers. They're not getting, the results that they're looking for. I'm going to talk to you a little bit today about why that happens and how to fix it. There really are 4 key reasons why scaling a business is so hard. There are a bunch, but these are the 4 big ones. First of all, operational complexity. It gets bigger as your business grows. And there's so many things you can brute force when you're doing it manually, whether it's your email stuff or managing your contact list. There's a lot of things that people start doing with spreadsheets, and they don't get a CRM, they don't get an email management tool. As your business grows, where are the friction points? Where are you doing analysis of where you're spending most of your time, and think about putting tools in place or people to be able to help mitigate that. I'll come back to that in a minute. Cash flow and capital constraints. Oftentimes, and look, most businesses, startup businesses are fairly bootstrapped, where, you're taking whatever cash flow you're getting and you're putting it back into the business. A lot of businesses don't raise capital. And you really do need to think about what you're doing when you're starting. Are you building a lifestyle business, or are you trying to really grow something big and have some kind of big financial exit? If it's the first one, I think bootstrapping is fine. If you're going the other path and you're really trying to build something of scale, well, I think bootstrapping in the very beginning can make sense to get a little bit of revenue traction to help you raise capital at a much better valuation. I do think bringing in external capital can be super helpful. Talk about that in a minute. The third big thing that really, impacts your ability to scale is, again, trying to keep the quality, of the product or service and the culture of your organization. That's pretty easy to manage, especially for someone who's a first-time, entrepreneur, solopreneur. When you're really small and you have a handful of customers and 1, 2, maybe 3 employees, being super selective and spending a lot of time and making sure that everyone's values are aligned. As you're scaling, it's much, much harder to do that. You got to do some things to help you fix those challenges. And the fourth one is the world is not static. So market conditions and the competitive landscape is continually changing. And so it's easy to go into a business and think, I ran those ads and it used to get me getting 12 appointments a week, and now I'm getting 4 appointments. Well, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing and expecting a different outcome. So, when the conditions on the ground change, you got to change your strategy and your tactics. So, be clear-eyed about what's going on, making sure that you're looking at the metrics and KPIs of your business and making adjustments. And it's why I think having a board of directors, which I'll come back to in a minute, can be super helpful over time. All right, so now I talked about the 4 big problems. Let me tell you about how to best manage those. First, when you're trying to build a scalable business, you've got to have systems and automation, processes in place. And I mentioned it a little bit before, but, in the beginning, you can be, texting and, using WhatsApp and things like that. But having tools like Slack, like a CRM tool, like Notion, project management tools, things that allow you to make sure that as the scope of what you're doing and the number of people you're coordinating with increases, that the tools that you're using to coordinate with, are there to help scale. And I think people can be really penny wise and pound foolish and not think this stuff through. The reality, most of these tools cost somewhere between tens of dollars and low hundreds of dollars per month. If you can't afford that, you don't have a business. So make those early investments. And, like I said, quite frankly, if you haven't gone through the process to, before you start your business, to really think through the numbers and whether you're going to have enough working capital to get it off the ground, you should continue your 9 to 5 or however you're bringing in money now, stockpile a little bit more money, raise some external capital from family or friends, whatever it might be, that believe in your vision and what you're doing, and do it that way. But if you don't have enough money for those, systems and processes, maybe postpone a little bit. The second one is make sure you've got the right amount of money. And my big point here that I alluded to is before you undertake any kind of entrepreneurial adventure, it is a fool's errand to not put together a thoughtful budgeting and forecasting model. Again, based on your best guesstimates, based on what information you have, whatever research you can do, trying to be as conservative as you can be and figure out how much capital is it going to take me to get this off the ground. Let's say you have $10,000 saved up and you want to launch a services business, let's just say. What the last thing you want to do is, do it prematurely. If the right amount of money, and again, I'm just making this up, is $20,000 and not 10, and you do it when you only have 10 and you run out of money, now you've really set yourself back. because now you've learned a bunch of things. You now realize the number should have been 20. Well, but you've already pissed away, the 10,000. So now you got to save up another 20 or raise another 20. You just made it that much harder. You will have learned some lessons, and that'll be useful, but better to get it right the first time when you can. Do the analysis up front, really think through the numbers and figure out how much capital you have. And then every month you should be looking at your plan versus your actual numbers and making adjustments, because it will be like a crystal ball if you do it properly. The third thing you need to do, hire and train both for culture and scalability. Can't emphasize enough how critical those first few hires in your organization are going to be. If they're the right hires, they can launch you into the stratosphere. And if they're the wrong hires, they can train wreck your business. And that's both from a culture and from a skill standpoint. One of the mistakes a lot of people make is they hire what they can afford versus hiring what they need. And again, I get it in the beginning when you're bootstrapping, that's harder to do, but there are other ways to do it. You can, find people that are in alignment with your vision and give them some upside, give them some equity, give them some profit sharing. There are ways to skin that cat that don't drain your startup capital, but still allow you to bring in the right people and better align incentives. And then the other thing is, Elon Musk makes this point before that, he's made the mistake again and again that he hires sometimes purely based on talent or skill set. And while that's understandable, smartest guy in the world makes that mistake. I know I've made that mistake a million times. Don't do it. Take the person who is less perfect skill match, but the work ethic, the attitude, the cultural fit is there. That person is generally gonna, last a lot longer and have a much bigger positive impact. And then the last one is try to do everything you can up front to validate the market fit of what it is you're doing. I was giving a talk at a CryoCon convention a couple of months ago, and I made the point that when you're doing a location-centric business, there are a lot of things you can do in terms of analyzing the market that you're in, but also analyzing markets you're not in. One of the nice things about location-specific businesses, which is what I was speaking about there, is while the people in your market are competitors, the ones in other markets are not. So you can get a credible amount of information. And so try to do, again, not analysis paralysis, but really spend the time and make the investment to make sure that your market fit and your expansion strategy is really well thought through. And again, how can you test it small? Anything you can test small and then pour more gasoline, put more fuel to once you've A/B tested some things and see what works. That's going to be the best strategy as opposed to, just dumping a bunch of money in something before you've tested small. So always test small when you can. So again, 4 biggest things that create the problem: operating complexity, cash flow constraints, managing quality and culture, a lot around people, and then making sure that you understand the market and the competitive pressures. 4 ways you address it: build scalable systems, make sure you've got the right amount of funding, make sure you've got the right team, and make sure you make that investment up front to make sure you've got the right market fit, and test small when you can. Thanks, everybody.